this presentation, I'll talk a little bit myself, about FRG, about what I do at FRG, and maybe some of your next career steps that you might want to take after graduation. So a little about myself. I grew up in Salisbury, went to Eastern High School, around here, and went to Marshall University and got a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics. I also took some additional courses in computer science and business and got minors in those. I went to NC State University and got my master's in financial mathematics. During my second year there, I interned at FRG as a summer intern, and then it turned into a fall internship, and then a spring internship, and then finally I got a full-time position there as a risk consultant when I graduated. So a little bit FRG, a little more about FRG. FRG is a risk management consulting firm dedicated to helping clients around the world maximize the effectiveness and value of their investments in risk management technology, methodology, and processes. So all this really means is that we utilize our technology skills, our problem-solving skills, and our industry knowledge and help clients with whatever they need. Our headquarters is in Cary, North Carolina, which is where I currently live. We have about 50 employees, and we also, in the past couple of years, have established an additional office in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, with about 10 employees. And we're also considered a SAS Gold Partner for the Canadian and Latin American regions. So I don't know if you know much about SAS, but they're a fairly larger firm, and they're also headquartered in Cary. So we work very closely with them and the products that they have there. So these are just a few of the companies that we've worked with at FRG. You see ExxonMobil, BB&T, Bank of America, Bank of Nova Scotia, Bank of Montreal, and just to give you some more information, there's risk departments, their headquarters for most Canadian and U.S. banks that are very large. They have Canadian and U.S. headquarters. So like Bank of Montreal, they have a headquarters in Chicago, and they also have a headquarters in Toronto to make sure that all of the U.S. and Canadian side both get taken care of and managed. And so just because it's a Canadian bank doesn't mean you can't work for them easily. If you want to move to a bigger city than Salisbury.
What? There's bigger cities than Salisbury?
So just to talk about more about FRG, in finance, risk refers to the degree of uncertainty and or potential financial loss inherent in an investment decision. So in general, risk is the threat of any negative consequences in a given situation. It really has an underlying balance of risk and reward. For example, if you go gambling and you decide to risk a lot of your money, you might win a lot of money, but there is a very real risk or threat that you may lose a lot as well. So it's just something that a lot of people have to balance, and everyone individually chooses how risky they want to be on a daily basis. So you choose to drive to school every day, eat greasy hamburgers at lunch, climb Mount Everest. These are all choices that you make, and they all have different degrees of risk to each. So whatever your choices are, they all come with some sort of risk, whether it be minimal or very high. You just have to decide how risky you actually want to be in your daily life. Banks have to make that same decision. They have to choose how risky, as a company, they want to be with their money. So there are three main types of risk. There's market risk, operational risk, and credit risk. These are the main ones. There's obviously ones that are below that as well. Market risk is associated with the changes in value of traded securities or contracts. Operational risk is associated with inadequate processes or systems. And credit risk is associated with default risk, bankruptcy risk, and downgrade risk. So default risk is the probability that a loan defaults. Bankruptcy risk is the probability that a loan or individual goes bankrupt. And downgrade risk is if their credit is downgraded while they still have a loan with you. So a lot of times we think about banks, the main one that they focus on is usually credit risk. They have, if you think of credit card loans, I don't know how many people in here have credit cards, but each one of those loans is in their portfolio, that you are now a risk to them because they're giving you this money for free and you're allowed to do things that you want to do with your money, but you may not be able to pay them back. You might go bankrupt, things like that, and those are the risks that they have to consider when giving you a loan. That's why everybody has credit scores people look at. So essentially, credit risk within the banking industry comes down to understanding expected loss and unexpected loss. In statistical terms, the expected loss is the average credit loss that we would expect from a loan or portfolio over a given amount of time. So in this example, your expected loss is that you pay a monthly car payment. You know that that loss is coming each month. An unexpected loss is you get in a car accident and now you have to pay this unexpected amount to get your car fixed. So essentially, banks attempt to understand their expected loss given past trends in their data. And this becomes complicated when you stick in macroeconomic factors that may affect that future loss. Once banks understand their expected loss, they understand how much capital they need to retain in order to prepare for that loss. So, what happens is, regulators attempt to quantify expected loss. Banks then are required by the regulators to retain a certain amount of capital based on their quantification. Banks then implement solutions to abide by those regulatory requirements. And then they work together on an ongoing basis after implementation through model monitoring processes, auditing, stuff like that to make sure that ongoing in the coming years, they're all on the same page. They're all doing what they need to be doing. So these are just some of the regulations that have been put in place in the past 5 to 10 years that banks may need to follow by a certain date and then on an ongoing basis. So there are many differences between these regulations. Some of them are only Canadian, some of them are only US, but that also becomes complicated because, like I said, Bank of Montreal has US and Canadian. So now they have to do the US and Canadian regulations. Some only apply to larger firms, some only apply to smaller firms. Some are different in the length of forecast that they use to calculate the expected loss. The assumptions that are used might be different for some of them, and the standards that are applied and what the regulators look at when in their process might be different as well. So, in order for these banks to implement those solutions, they usually go through the software development lifecycle. So, if you think about any website, even the Catawba portal, that would be considered a software. They had to create it or kick off the project. The client, Catawba, needed to decide what requirements they wanted from their website. They wanted students to be able to enroll. They wanted students to be able to pay them. Those are things that they would require from somebody building them the software. You have to do analysis, design, development. You always have to test your products. You have to deploy them, and then on an ongoing basis, you have to improve them and make sure that they're working like they should, and then maybe go back around. Maybe there's another functionality that they want to put in there that also needs to go through all of this, make sure everything's working, deploy it again, and then hopefully it comes to a stop at some point. But so what FRG does is we help them with that process. So requirements gathering, testing, deployment, development, we can help them with all of those things or just a part of it. If they already have resources for some of it, then we can provide them with something like data analysis that they might not be, they might not have the resources for that, so we provide them with that. So these are a few of the services that FRG provides. So the requirements gathering, documentation, data assessment, model development, implementation. Usually there's a specific goal, whether it be a specific regulation deadline. Hey, we need this in a year, so you need to help us with that. Those usually are very prevalent nowadays with new regulations coming out after the financial crisis. Also testing services, development and execution, and then platform hosting, which is another thing that we have knowledge on. So what I do in FRG is I'm on the business analytics team, or BAT, like we like to say, because it sounds cooler. So we focus on training, testing, advising, documenting, and modeling. So what that means is on any given project at FRG, at least one business analytics team member would be involved helping in these areas, making sure that all the standards of FRG are met. So here are just some examples that we have run into and we have actually completed at FRG. So here's the issue and then the solution. So the issue is the client needed to build a suite of models to comply with the new accounting standards CECL. The client was unsure of the task, analysis, and steps involved in a model build process. So that involves advising, documenting, anything that has to do with the regulation. FRG helped determine steps and analysis necessary for the model build. This involves data analysis, segmentation of portfolios, developing the model, methodologies for the models, model documentation. All of that goes into that one step. FRG also identified appropriate methodology approaches for 10 segments. FRG built a suite of models that estimated different components of loss. FRG created a structured, efficient, consistent model development process, and FRG delivered model documents that adhered to SR 11.7 guidelines. So this is just one example of what we have done for a client. Another example is, the client needed to implement models for IFRS 9, which is a Canadian regulation, within a controlled platform. So they wanted a user-friendly platform where they can go and run their models and create their reports in a user-friendly fashion. The client wasn't sure what the platform should look like, so that involves design, but knew the functionality that the platform needed to have. So those are the requirements. That's the requirement gathering step. The client needed resources to develop the platform in a timely manner, obviously before a certain deadline. So we utilized business knowledge to design the central platform to match client requirements. We provided resources to complete the platform development, and then implemented a data model to assist in audit practices so that they are that they can take taking pictures.
Makes me nervous too.
To assist them in the audit practices so that they can go back a year later, and if an auditor comes back and says, oh, what did you run a year ago? That's something that they would need to know, or they would be fined or in trouble or something like that. We also created training and documentation materials that has to do with the business analytics team to help the employees learn to use the new platform. So these are just things that FRG has actually done on certain projects, some of them larger, some of them smaller. FRG itself was built out of SAS, so our partners all were employees of SAS for a while before they created FRG, which is more on the credit risk side initially when we first started 10 years ago. So we've worked closely with them. SAS has products, but usually SAS products are meant for larger firms, and a lot of the smaller firms don't have the budget to pay for those very extravagant products that SAS has. So we also have partnered with them because FRG has the business knowledge and the technology skills in order to help clients customize those products. So we do work with SaaS products, but we also have our own. So that can be more customized for specific needs of the company. They might not have a whole lot of models that they need to run, but they might need other calculations done for accounting purposes. So usually when those types of things go to SAS, SAS sends them to us, and then we can help them in a more personal, more strategic manner in order to meet their needs. So let's talk about a little bit of what your next steps might be. So at FRG, we have a new employee excellence rating program. This is meant for students coming right out of college in various degrees. And you basically are mentored by FRG consultants, and we train you. It focuses mostly on SAS programming skills and the risk domain, but then in the past couple of years, by my say-so, they've added in some technical communication skills, like writing, presenting. Those are all things that you might have to do in the actual workplace. So this is just a training program. We have external and internal NEAT programs. So the external ones are, you would train with us for 6 months to a year. We teach you all of these skills, programming and not. And then you would go and work full-time for one of our clients. Usually it's specified beforehand. So we have had Bank of Montreal and Toronto Dominion. You would either move to Chicago or Charlotte after working in Cary for that 6 months to a year as a full-time employee for them. We also have internal programs where we want to train people in order for them to be FRG consultants at the end of it. Some of you might be wondering how to pick out a grad school, or if you do want to go to grad school. So if this is what you decide and this is something that interests you, my tip to you would be to do as much research as possible. A lot of the programs involved in this sort of information have many terms associated with them. So we have analytics, mathematical finance, financial mathematics, business intelligence, quantitative management, data science, data analytics, advanced analytics. There's so many terms that are being thrown out there, and they all involve different courses and different skills and different time. Some of them are 10 months, some of them are 1 year, some of them are 2-year programs. It just depends on what courses they want you to take. If they require, some of them require projects, some of them require internships. Some of them are more focused on programming skills. Some of them are more focused on data analysis. It just depends on what you really want to go into. So do as much research as possible. These are the ones that these are all North Carolina, obviously. There are other ones in the United States. So all of these have some sort of program that has to do with these skills. So we can talk about that. So there are a variety of career paths that you may be able to take. These are just a few of them. You might want to be a software developer. That is also programming. There's portfolio management. This is all risk driven. If you want to manage a portfolio for somebody else, then that's something to compare to. Business analytics. Usually you're solving problems. Data analytics. You have to be very detailed. A lot of it does require programming. Software tester. You have to have some programming skills. You also have to be very detail-oriented. Model developer, you have to have a significant amount of math skills and analytics skills, especially with data. Model validator, analytics and detail-driven, and data management, which is very detail-driven. So it's important to understand your strengths and your weaknesses in order for you to decide what sort of career path you want to take. You still may not know, but I think, especially after grad school or after school in general, a lot of what you do is to try to find things that you want to do, but you might end up being like, oh, well, I really don't like doing this. So those are, if you know what you don't like, then you can go more towards what you do like. So it's something that you just have to figure out on your own. I have been doing that for the past 7 years, I guess, trying to figure out what I actually want to do, but I can't complain too much. And that's pretty much all the content I had. I do stuff with technical communication. I recently got my foundation certification for technical communication through the society, and I've been writing some blog posts that are posted on the FRD website, which you're more than welcome to go check out. Some of my posts are about some of the regulations, namely CECL, that just came out. Banks are having to go through that process now. There's some pamphlets in the back that you can take out as well about FRG and their training program. And my contact information, I'm on LinkedIn as well. So you're more than welcome to contact me at any time. I can look over resumes. I can get you in contact with other people in the field as well. Interesting to you. Is there any questions?
For SAS, you guys all the programming level for these software skills you have for risk analysis or shock tests for other financial groups. Is it all based in SAS or do you use any other?
So a lot of the companies that we work with already had SAS presence in their company. So a lot of it has to do with SAS products and SAS programming. But we have seen a lot, we do have internal projects as well where we've been looking into stuff with R, Python, and other languages that are pretty much better in machine learning and AI and stuff like that are hot topics nowadays. And a lot of banks I've seen have a lot of specific departments that do those things. So I can't say for all banks, but SAS is very involved in a lot of them, but just because they're very proprietary and they're very private, and so it makes banks feel comfortable using their products because they know that their data, their results, their models, everything is safe whereas using R, Python opens them up to a little bit more because they're open source. Any other questions?
Go ahead.
No.
Okay. You mentioned Python and R. Do you use both of those at FRG? Do you see Python edge now R now as what, most of the predictions are showing that Python is definitely becoming more in use?
I think I understand that they're very similar. I do know both languages and I have used them at FRG, mostly in internal projects. Because a lot of our clients already had SAS, so they go with SAS mostly. But personally, I think that R is more a statistical language. Python is being used, I think we're using it now for kind of like user interface programming. So I don't know exactly about other banks, but I do know that they have their own machine learning and AI initiatives that probably do use R and Python. I don't know which is better.
FRG, with all the financial crisis, like the new regulations, so you guys have a team that analyzes the regulations and then a team that applies them. So like with the structure of FRG, we have like analysts of those regulations and those that apply.
Yeah, so we are a fairly small firm. So usually, like my boss, since we were on the CECL project, he was very versed in CECL knowledge. We usually have some coined experts in specific regulations, but then also banks. That's also on them to understand the regulation before going to implement it, obviously. So through modeling, through all these things that they have to do, they have to understand the regulation themselves too. But we do help them in advising them on the steps to get to where they need to be.
Do you guys tend to keep like an ongoing relationship with particular clients, or do you get a lot of new clients coming in? Or?
Yeah, so I can only speak for the past 3 or 4 years that I've been there, but we do have a couple major clients, including Bank of Montreal and Toronto, which are still ongoing. Usually, since we do have the training program, we've trained, I would say, 5 to 10 people for each company already. And so they are supposed to move to the client and then take over some of whatever he's doing so we can kind of roll off the project. It doesn't always work like that because there is mostly a learning curve when it comes to project-specific things. But we basically try to decrease our resources on the project, trying to get them to be self-sufficient.
So you'd like to like cut off that relationship and let them do it themselves, sort of, and bring in new.
Yeah, I mean, we can always advise them, and we'll always have like some sort of budget for 1 or 2 resources that know the project at FRG. We continue to advise them. We work with them. If they ever need something new, then we put more resources on. Like Bank of Montreal, I think we're pretty much done with all the platform setup and everything. So basically, we're just there to help with data. They get new data every quarter. We have to help run those data processes, and they have to run quarterly. So we're always kind of involved, I guess.
And the new regulations come out, obviously, and you have to.
Yeah, so CECL came out, now it's kind of delayed. They delayed it 1 more year, but we have gotten a lot of projects in the past year on CECL specifically because they have to be implemented by January 2020. Some of them have until January 2021, but these projects, they take many months to actually implement those solutions. So, especially for the much larger banks. So, yeah, once it's brought up by regulators, then they kind of have to start thinking about it at least and start budgeting for it and providing those resources to get to where they need to be. And most of them like to be there way before the deadline because they don't want to get caught in a sticky situation there either. So, yeah, I mean, there's been IFARS 9 projects still going on, even though that was implemented, I don't even know how long ago, a year ago probably. So all those are sort of ongoing. We do have like much smaller projects that just want us to kind of analyze their processes and try to make them more efficient, whether automating them or just simply figuring out an easier way for them to do things. Those are some of the smaller projects that we do.
Thanks.
Do you work with financial institutions only, or do you do personal portfolio analysis?
So I want to say that most of them are financial institutions of some sort. We do have value, I'm trying to think of the acronym, but we do have a platform specifically for investment. So we currently have a client that was basically built out of somebody having a very large amount of money and they want to make a portfolio for it. So now there's a team of people that analyze their portfolio on a day-to-day basis in order for them to grow their money, in order to help. It's more of like a philanthropy type company. So they want to build their amount of money so that they can help more people. So what we do is we try to help them do the whole portfolio management thing and we provide a platform for them for that. So those are other things. Like I said, we also work with ExxonMobil, so that's energy. I don't know a whole lot about that stuff, but I've worked some on it recently, and most of it is about kind of a delay. I don't want to say delay, it seems harsh. A delay in technology advances in most of these places. So they have all of these kind of standard systems that they've been using for 10, 15 years. They're like, oh, well, this works, but it can always be improved. And I think a lot of banks and a lot of companies are realizing that they could be doing things more efficiently and they could be automating some of their processes. So it's just something that we've been helping people with.
Clearly, the background that you have is a lot of mathematics, right? So mathematical finance, there's this blending of these fields that require you to have knowledge both in mathematics, finance, soon as well accounting. In terms of the people that you work with, either at the firms that you're consulting with or people within your own firm, do you find a lot of difference between like the people who are being brought together? Because this seems to me to be a subject that sort of pulls in a lot of different interests. Do you ever talk about what different kinds of training people have, like some of your colleagues? Do they all come from the area of mathematical finance, or are you like working in a team that's got like different sort of specialties?
Mm-hmm. So FRG, I would say, well, the business analytics team is what I'm on. And I would say that's kind of the between of technology or development and the business people. So the business people, they know what they want at the very end. They just don't know how to get there. Then there's the technology people who have all these programming skills. They can do it, but they need that kind of bridge to understand what the business actually wants. And so the business analytics team is usually there to advise on those sorts of issues. Yeah, it really depends on the project that we're on. Some of them, like I've worked with model developers, they have one mindset, which is modeling. Then there's data team, then there's testing, then there's monitoring, then there's there's all of these different teams, and usually, unfortunately, they're separated at most banks because they have such large teams for each thing. But then they need to communicate as well, so everybody's on the same page and not doing things twice that they don't need to be doing. So, at FRG, actually, our training program, which is what I've been talking about a little bit, we've been trying to figure out how to take different backgrounds and give them a training program in order to catch them up on other things that they don't have. So somebody might come to FRG and be really good at SAS programming, but they need some communication skills, or they need some Linux command skills. So those are things that are more for them, where we can kind of customize their training in order to get them to where they need to be. But in the industry, yes, there's a variety of different backgrounds. Some of them are in accounting, business analytics. Some of them know nothing about technology. Some of them know a whole lot about technology. Some of them are math people. So yeah, it's the initial project stage is very difficult in trying to learn what all the people's strengths and weaknesses are and trying to get to where we want to be.
Sounds like, given those sorts of issues, going into the area of business communications, you mentioned that some of the work that you're doing with your blog post and technical communications, that really is one of the great skills that a lot of these, that you need in order to be able to sort of bridge the gap between what people want, what the clients want, and what is possible technically.
Right.
So you need people that are capable of sort of bridging that gap. I did have a larger, this is more like an industry as a whole kind of question. Do you guys talk much about, or is there any response to, like, the financial crisis or the regulations? Do people see the current environment as one that's creating more jobs in this area? Or is the industry consolidating and there's fewer jobs? What do you think about that?
I wouldn't know about the job growth. I would say that the regulations that have been put in place have obviously, I mean, we work in that, so
Right?
has increased our jobs.
There you go.
But in general, I'm not really sure. I would have to think on that a little bit.
Well, I think you did sort of answer that question, because the regulatory environment, as that becomes more complex, then you need more people with these skills in order to be able to do this work. So
Yeah, I
it's like,
think it's sort of pushed people like in the risk domain. I think that's why, I think when I was initially looking at grad schools, there was only 2 programs available in North Carolina, and they just keep popping up, and with different terminologies and different courses offered and different, just to try to get people caught up, because after the financial crisis, everybody kind of clustered and wanted to know all these things, but a lot of people didn't. So it's a fairly new field, specifically for risk and financial math, and a lot of banks have definitely grown from their risk management departments a lot in the past 10 years. So it's very interesting to see how much budget they put into that specific field nowadays.
yeah, you'd think that a crisis would cause people to want to leave. It's like, a tornado or a fire would drive people out of it, but actually, when you have events like that, it actually causes more attention and the need for more work.
Yeah.
As a graduate of a small liberal arts college going into this field, do you feel that you've had any advantages or disadvantages relative to your peers in terms of management, communication, things like that?
Yeah, I think I went to Marcel University. If anybody didn't catch that earlier, I'm sure you're all familiar. We're in the same football playing or whatever. I don't know anything about that.
Conference.
But yeah, so they didn't really have data analytics or data assessment classes. Those are probably things that would have been important to know before going to grad school. Some of the financial modeling I didn't know. And a lot in the risk domain I just didn't know because it just wasn't taught in my undergrad degree. So it was a fairly steep learning curve, and I'm still learning every day what terms mean and acronyms and what regulations are and stuff like that. So yeah, it might have put me at a little bit of a disadvantage, but I did try to get the computer science minor just because I knew that programming was going to be important. I had no idea what SAS even was in undergrad, so that was definitely a steep learning curve. But I did C++ and just kind of basic programming, which definitely helps, and it kind of teaches you if you like it or not, especially in programming. Some people you might be good at it, but is it something you actually want to do?
Do you know how or why FRG got into Asia? How'd they get into Asia? In Lapur?
Yeah, so we had some prospective clients, and we did have a client in that area when we first initiated that headquarters. But those have kind of went away. But there's also this need to have 24/7 help from clients, especially bigger banks that do work in those countries. So we are now able to provide 24/7 support for those companies if they ever need help. So 12-hour difference. I've been on projects with the people who are working in Malaysia and getting emails and stuff at 8 or 9 p.m. So luckily I can say, okay, well, I left off here. You got it for the rest of the night, and we're able to pick back up and actually get some stuff done in that time, rather than everybody just going to sleep and or staying up super late when it's not really necessary. But I think the main goal was to have clients in that area as well, and hopefully build those employees as well.
And Samantha, this has been an excellent talk. It's just so engaging to hear you talk about these things. And I'm really pleased to see the integration of the information systems and computer science and just about everything you do. And we're right in the middle of registration. I want to remind students we've got classes. You can take information systems planning. We've got business data analytics, and then next year we're starting a data visualization class and a data mining class. And so we're really moving into this area. We have Python and R classes, and then we have SAS in all of our labs. So I'm sure we'll be integrating SAS into more of these. You mentioned the importance of that. A lot of our professors have gone to the world headquarters in Cary and gotten training in SAS. So I hope we can have you back and talk again. This has just been so pertinent to everything that we're trying to grow into. I really appreciate it.
I did have a question about things you like and things you don't like, right? You mentioned now some of the international activities of the bank, as well as all the various locations. Do you have to travel a lot for your current job, or do you want to travel a lot, or are you interested in staying here? You more like happy to be in North Carolina, or are you thinking about some of these options that you might have in front of you?
Yeah, so when I first started at FRG, I said, oh yeah, I really want to be a consultant because I want to travel. And so they told me that we might have projects in Germany and Australia and all these things. I was like, oh, that's cool, but then they never happened. So, actually this year was the first year that I actually got to travel a lot more.
Okay.
Went to Chicago twice, Toronto twice, and Atlanta, mostly staying on
Yeah.
these countries. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoy Toronto. It's somewhere where I would definitely want to move someday. But
Okay.
we'll see.
Yeah, well,
Um,
it sounds like you're staying busy. I mean, one thing that, travel can sometimes sound very, very nice, but then, you know, for people that I know that their employment requires it, it gets to be a pretty big grind. I mean, maybe the opportunity to move someplace else that's associated with your current work. I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of very, very portable skills, right? You could be working anywhere in the world. But the day-to-day traveling with the people who are, you know, the airport cowboys that travel every day of the week, that can get to be a real grind.
Yeah, I think I can't remember, but in my contract, I think there's a percentage of that may be necessary travel.
Okay.
So that's always something to look at when you're signing things. Because you may be required to travel 20, 30, 40% of your time almost. But our partners of FRG who kind of lead the pack, they definitely have all the airline miles and hotels, and they have all the points that they need to go anywhere they want to. So, and I know that it gets grueling for them. Luckily, there's only one time where I had to go for a week and then was back for a week and then had to go another week. So that was a little bit too much,
Yeah.
being gone 2 weeks out of the month. But other than that, I kind of like traveling because it kind of splits up the week and you're able to do work in another city and get to experience other things. So I enjoyed it. I don't know if that was my question.
Any last questions? No,
Is there
let's
any other questions?
say thanks, Samantha, for her presentation.
There's pamphlets in the back, and then I gave the professor some information on the training program, and I can be in close contact with them if they give me some students or resumes that I can look over and pass along.
If anybody's from Dr. Baker's class and hasn't signed the form, which wherever it is,